Today we are going to be talking about dividing decimals. Remember, when we are dividing decimals, we need to make sure that we always check our sign. Remember, if we are dividing two numbers of the same signs, it's going to be a positive. So that is like a positive divided by a positive or a negative divided by a negative. Those would both equal a positive answer. If we are dividing with different signs, we will get a negative. That is like a positive divided by a negative or a negative divided by a positive. Remember, your division rule is the same one as your multiplication rule. So let's start off with number 1, dividing by a whole number. When we divide decimals, we need to make sure that we set the problem up right. Our first number is the number that is going to go under the divisor, and the second number is what goes on the outside of the divisor. So, here we would have 20.1 would be under the divisor, while 3 would be on the outside. So number 1, we would just divide like normal. 3 can't go into 2. I like to put an X there to show that nothing goes in that place value. 3 can go into 20 how many times? 3 can go into 20 6 times. That gives us 18. So then we subtract 20 minus 18, and we get 2. We bring down the 1. 3 can go into 21 how many times? 7. 3 times 7 is 21, and that leaves us with no remainder. Now the last part, we need to take our decimal and move it straight up. And before we circle our final answer, we need to make sure we have the correct number, or we have the correct sign. We have a negative divided by a positive. Those are different signs. Therefore, my answer is going to be a negative answer. So our final answer for number 1 is negative 6.7. Let's move on to number 2. We have 64.35 divided by 5. So remember, the first number is what goes under the divisor. So 64.35 is what goes under the divisor. 5, the second number, goes outside of it. So then we divide like normal. 5 can go into 6 one time. That leaves us with a remainder of 1. We bring down the 4. 5 can go into 14 2 times. That will give us 10. If you want to, you can then bring the decimal straight up in your answer. Okay? Wherever the decimal is inside the divisor, when you're dividing a decimal by a whole number, you can just put the decimal straight up. That will give us a remainder of 4. Once we subtract those, we bring down the 3. 5 can go into 43 8 times. That will give us 40. When we subtract those, that'll leave us with 3. Then we bring down the 5. 5 can go into 35 7 times, which then gives us a remainder of 0. We have a positive divided by a positive, so our answer is just going to be positive 12.87. Let's move on to number 3. We have negative 380.32 divided by negative 4. So, the 380.2 goes 0.32, goes inside the divisor. The 4 goes on the outside. Since there's a whole number on the outside, we can just divide like normal. 4 can go into 3 0 times. So you can put your little X there. 4 can go into 38 9 times. 4 times 9 is 36. $38 minus 36 will leave us with 2. Bring down the 0. 4 can go into 20 5 times. That'll give us 20. Bring up the decimal point to the answer. Bring down the 3. 4 can go into 3 0 times, so we have to put a 0 there. 3 minus 0 would be 3 still. Then we have to bring down the 2. 4 can go into 32 8 times. (32) divided by 32, or minus 32, will give us 0. So now, before I circle my answer, I need to check the sign. I have a negative divided by a negative. Well, those are the same signs, so my answer is going to be a positive 95.08. So that was just dividing by a whole number. Now let's talk about dividing by a decimal. We still set the problem up the same way. The first number is the number under the divisor. The second number is the number outside of the divisor. So number 1 on dividing by a decimal, I would set it up. We have 110.85, and then we have 1.5 on the outside. When we were dividing by a whole number, we could just then divide. But since we are dividing a decimal by a decimal, that cannot happen. We need to make this outside number a whole number. So we need to move the decimal as many places as to the right as we need to make it a whole number. In this case, we have to move this decimal over 1 space. Therefore, we have to go inside the divisor and move that decimal over 1 space as well. So now we are actually doing 15 divided by 1,108.5. So When we divide by a decimal, we need to make it back into dividing by a whole number by moving the decimals. So now we divide. 15 can't go into 1, 15 can't go into 11, 15 can go into 110 7 times. That's going to give us 105. So we do 110 minus 105, and that leaves us with 5. Bring down the 8. 15 can go into 58 3 times. That's going to give us 45. $50 minus 45 will leave us with 5. The decimal then can go straight up. Bring down that next 5. Sorry. Back here, that's a 58, not a 50. 58 minus 45 will give us 13. Now we put the decimal, bring down the 5. 15 can go into 135 9 times. We subtract 135 by 135 and we get 0. So before I circle my final answer, I'm going to check my sign. I have a negative divided by a negative. So my answer is going to be a positive because same sign's positive. So my answer is 73.9. Number 2. We have negative 9 divided by 0.3. Remember, the first number is the number that goes under the divisor. The second number goes on the outside. So, since there is a decimal on the outside, we need to move that decimal to the right however many times to make that a whole number. In this case, we just have to move it over once. Whatever we do to the outside when dividing, we have to do to the inside. So remember, when we are dividing, when we have a whole number, we can always put a decimal 0 after it. So here, we can do 9.0. And now we can start dividing. 3 can go into 9, so that makes the new problem 3 divided by 9.0. 3 can go into 9 3 times. That gives us 9, and that'll give us 0. The decimal goes straight up. We bring the other 0 down. Sorry. Let's go back to the beginning of this problem. Remember, we move the decimal 1 on the outside, so don't forget to move the decimal 1 on the other one before we start dividing. We missed that step, I'm sorry. So now that gives us 3 divided by 90. 3 can go into 9 3 times. That'll give us a 9. Subtract those, that'll give us a 0. Bring down a 0. 3 can go into 0 0 times. That will also give us a 0. Before I circle my final answer, we have a negative divided by a positive. That's going to give us those are different signs. So my answer is going to be negative 30. And for number 3, we have 7.2 divided by 0.12. Remember, the first number goes on the inside of the divider. The second number goes on the outside. In this problem, to make the outside a whole number, we need to move the decimal twice. 1, 2. So we have to do the same thing on the inside, which will make this problem 12 divided by 720. Twelve can't go into 7. 12 can go into 72 6 times. That gives us 72. We subtract that, we get a 0. We bring the 0 down. 12 can go into 0 0 times, which gives us a 0, which gives us the remainder of 0. We have, before I circle anything, check your sign. A positive divided by a positive is going to give us a positive 60. On the last two problems, we are going to find the quotient. Round our answer to the nearest hundredths. Okay, so that's important. How far must you go to be able to round to the nearest hundredths? Remember, when we're rounding, we have to look at the next place value to determine if we have to round or not. So that means we are going to have to go to the thousandths place. So we have 0.742 divided by 2.4. Remember, the first number is a number that goes under the divisor. The second number goes on the outside. Here, we're going to have to move the decimal 1, so I need to move the decimal once in here. That's going to give us a new problem of 24 divided by 7.42. I can move that decimal straight up right there. 24 can't go into 7. 24 can go into 74 3 times. That's going to give us 72. 74 minus 72 is 2. Bring down the other 2. 24 can't go into 22. So we have to add a 0. That would be a 0. That would give us 22 still. So then we would add another 0 and we would bring it down. 24 can go into 220 9 times. That would give us 216. If we subtract that, we would get a 4. If you look, you can tell we are tenths, hundredths. We already have the thousandths place. So we have all the information we need to round. Remember, when rounding, if you're looking at the number and it's 0 through 4, you will stay the same. If it's 5 through 9, you're going to round up. So in this case, 9 is our thousandths place. So 9 is telling the 0, round up. So our final answer would be, and we have a positive divided by a positive, so our final answer would be 0.31. And then last, number 2. Remember, the first number goes inside the parentheses. The second number goes on the outside. Since there's no decimal on the outside, we can just divide like normal. 3 can go into 6 2 times. That gives us 6. Bring down the 6. 3 can go into 6 2 times. That's 6, which would be 0. Decimal goes straight up. Bring down the 9. 3 can go into 9 3 times. That gives us a 9. Subtract that, we get a 0. Bring down the 8. 3 can go into 8 2 times. That would give us 6. And that would leave us with 2. Remember, we only have the hundredths place, so we're going to have to add a 0 and bring it down. 3 can go into 20 6 times. Now, since we have to the hundredths place, or thousandths place, we can now round. Since we have a 6 in the thousandths place, that tells us to round the hundredths place up. We have a positive divided by a positive, so our final answer will be 22.33. If you have any questions about how to divide decimals, please contact your teacher.